2022 has been a great year for the channel, as not only have I seen some promising growth, but I've also had the pleasure of driving some fantastic cars. Join me as I take a look at some of our best moments and some of the worst.
Put it into gear. Nothing. Brilliant, innit?
My name's Tom, and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Now, at the end, I'm going to answer a few questions, including but not limited to the car I found the most surprising, the car that was the most fun, and the car that was faster than I expected. But first, let's go back to January and work our way through to now, starting with this beautiful frozen red M4. Well, already I'll tell you this was the scariest car I drove this year, which when you consider I had to go in a near 900 horsepower supercar, that shouldn't make any sense. You see, like most other car nuts, I love getting a car sideways and really feeling where the limit is. But the problem with the M4 is, due to it being a sharp track tool, it breaks traction very aggressively, even when compared to something like a Mercedes C63. So if you're looking to buy one, keep your wits about you at all times. Let's see what I mean? You do have to be a little bit careful, even in MDM mode. The Volvo XC90 is the staple family SUV. They've never been about performance, although this one, the XC90 Recharge, certainly caught my eye. With an electric motor powering the rear and a twin-charged engine powering the front, it was hard not to take an interest in this thing. Handling-wise, it was still very much comfort-orientated, but I have to admit, it certainly had some poke. It's not only that though, you see, usually hybrids can be a bit jerky when it comes to switching between combustion and electric power, but the team behind this system managed to make it feel surprisingly natural. The only downside to this technology is that it's very user specific. If you only do 14 miles a day and can charge the thing at home, it'll save you heaps of money over your typical combustion engine only car. But the second you run out of battery, you're going to be consuming the same amount of fuel as Mercedes E63 S AMG. Yeah, ouch. Talking about AMG Mercs, let's look at our next car on our list, the C63 S. Unfortunately, this is the last V8 C-Class. I know, sad moment indeed. Yes, the new one will be quicker to 60, but the emotion of this thing can never be replicated nor replaced by a 2-litre hybrid. For me, this thing is the pinnacle of AMG. Huge engine, big power, and pure rear-wheel drive. It's grandma's recipe, and boy, is it a good one. Anyway, moving on to my first time driving a Range Rover. These things come under a lot of flack for being unreliable, and believe me, I've got first-hand experience of that unreliability. But when everything's working, there really is nothing that quite drives like a Range Rover. It's a feeling of superiority, class, and outright ruggedness, all combined into one, that makes this one of my favourite cars still, even with its drawbacks. Now we come to a car that not many people know about, the Mercedes GLE 53 AMG Coupe. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting much from this thing, as in my eyes, any big AMG without a V8 is just half-baked in my opinion. But boy, did this thing surprise me. It really did just about everything. Unbelievably refined on the motorway, yet an absolute weapon on a B-road.
It's as fast as a hot hatch and as big as a yacht. Way!
As I said in the review, that 4MATIC Plus system is a marvel of engineering. And one thing's for sure, this GLE 53 is 100% a proper AMG. Unfortunately, it had proper AMG fuel economy too.
It's our motorway stint over then, and we only managed 25.7 miles per gallon. I think because it's raining, it's affected that figure a little bit.
Whilst we're still on the AMG subject, we may as well talk about our next review, the E63 S. Going into this review, I expected an all-wheel drive C63 with more power, because, well, logically, that's what you'd think it is. But boy was I wrong. This is a serious car and not just something that burns rubber. Of course, yes, you can put it in rear-wheel drive only mode and destroy tyres faster than Michelin makes them. But there's more than meets the eye with this beast. There was some seriously good steering feel, precise, positive, predictable, and the chassis control just blew me away. This was like someone from Porsche had snuck into AMG's dev team and tweaked every component to just be a tiny bit more precise than it should be. This thing goes exactly where you want it to every single time, and even though it's a lot of money, it's 100% worth every single penny.
We've got the pan roof open, so you'll hear a bit more exhaust noise. ESP in Sport, in race mode. And it's interesting, it kind of goes sideways, but it's trying to get you to do a fast lap rather than go super sideways.
Moving on, now we're talking Vorsprung der Technik with this Audi SQ5. God, I butchered that pronunciation. For me, this was typical Audi. Not overly exciting, but very, very nice. It's hard to explain, but the way I'd put it is like this. It's a car that feels like it could go 155 miles an hour all day long, and you'd barely be breaking a sweat doing it. It's just easy and an absolute pleasure to use. For most people, this is all the excitement they'd ever need. But if you want something with 4 rings, and you are mental, well, take a look at our next car.
Right, let's give it some.
And yes, even though this has 4 rings on the front, this is definitely not typical Audi. This is the Audi R8 V10 Plus, and this one deserves another plus adding onto it because it has a VF800 supercharger strapped to it, upping the already ludicrous power figure to well over 800 bhp. Despite the power though, it was still very easy to drive. Fundamentals like visibility, steering weight, steering comfort and position are all good, so to live with, it's not actually too far off a Golf. Of course, when you do put your foot down though, it seems to slow time down. You feel your eyes compress in their sockets, your legs become weightless, and your ears overcome with pure heavenly noises. And your heart? Well, your heart is actually quite relaxed. You see, even with all that power, it still manages to remain composed. Kind of like a fighter jet taking off. Undeniably powerful, but unequivocally controlled. Up next is my first time behind the wheel of a Mercedes S-Class. So, was it all it's cracked up to be? Of course it was. In fact, it was even better than I expected. The C-Class and E-Class are fantastic cars, but the S-Class just feels like it's in a different league. Not only is it quieter, more comfortable and more technologically advanced, it just feels better put together. It's like the assembly line took just a little more care with each individual part on it. Oh, and the ride. My god, the ride. The only way I can describe it is, it's like flying in smooth air. There's the odd bump, but there's nothing that startles you. For me, it's still very much the king of its class. Moving back to AMG lights now, and this was again a very surprising drive. Not only did the car handle well, it still gave me a proper AMG experience. The exhaust note was raspy, the engine was zippy, but most importantly, it was just a tidy package. Good looks, fun to drive, enough space for most families, and a soundtrack you're not going to get bored of. Oh yeah, also, it was surprisingly quick for what the numbers would suggest. Now we come to a car that many enthusiasts love, the VW Golf R. This particular one was rather nice too. With the factory-fitted Akrapovic exhaust system and two-tone leather seats, you'd struggle to find another like it. The thing is though, whilst I do love this car, I really do, it just doesn't excite me. Don't get me wrong, it's not boring, but it just doesn't scratch that itch. If it had more positive steering and a slightly more playful rear end, it'd be perfect, but it's just not quite there. For daily driving though, this is the hot hatch you should pick. And that's why I think you see so many on the road.
Open the pan roof, see if we can get DSG fart through here. No. It's always when you go through a tunnel, it never does it.
Now then, another rare car, the Mercedes GLE 43 AMG. This thing was hilarious. It was effectively a totally regular GLE in terms of how it went round a corner. but it just had the most ridiculous exhaust note. Let's have a listen.
Sound check.
Supposedly this is a stock car too. Brilliant. Ford up next, and here we have a Stage 1 Ford Focus ST3 petrol. You could get a diesel version of this, but the petrol is the one to go for, as in my eyes it has quite a bit more excitement to offer. Chassis, steering, balance and power delivery are things that Ford does undeniably well. If you're looking for something fun, then look at Ford's. Not many other brands come close to them for the money. There's just something about the way they go round corners that makes me smile. With a Stage 1 map, this ST was also pretty damn quick. In fact, it beat a stock Ford Focus RS in the 30 to 70 sprint. Another famous car up next, the VW Golf GTI. It's loved by many, and for good reason. It's peppy, doesn't take itself so seriously, isn't crazy expensive to maintain / run, and is just overall a really tidy package. During the review of this car, I found the GTI to be a tad more playful than the Golf R, and that made me think, why buy the Golf R? The GTI is cheaper, more efficient, exactly the same inside, and not that much slower really. It won't win the 0 to 60, but it'll put a much bigger smile on your face than the R will. Enough sensible stuff though, let's look at something ridiculous. Have you ever seen a Range Rover SVR and thought, yeah, it's great, but I just wish it was a bit more imposing? Well, thankfully, Overfinch has the answer. More angles, more rims, and more noise makes this SVR an absolute beast to look at and to drive. In fact, it was much better to drive than I was anticipating. Let's have a look at some of my favourite bits.
See what this thing's like. It's a boat. Oh, wow, the rear end moved then. Whoa, what? Since when does a Range Rover slide? Brakes do feel good, by the way. They are very reassuring. Sound check. Oh my god. That has got to be one of the best noises I've ever heard. Steering feel is a bit weird, slightly vague. Gets the job done though.
All well and good, right? Well, as fun as this Range Rover is, unfortunately, it is still a Range Rover. Yeah, after the review, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to get some nice gritty photos and footage of this car for some Instagram content? Well, I got all the content I needed, and then bam, no more gearbox. Initially, I thought something really bad had happened, like a blown trans, but no, a small piece of plastic in the shift lever had snapped. And that rendered this well over £100,000 car completely useless.
Look at this, so engine runs fine, but if I try and put it into gear, nothing. Brilliant, innit?
I couldn't help but laugh, as a car as rugged as this could be taken down by a mere plastic switch. Thankfully, once I disassembled the gear knob, I was able to find the connecting switch and get this thing into gear. Crisis averted, but seriously, something like a gear switch should never ever break. Anyway, rant over. Let's look at something I still think is one of the best bang for buck cars out there at the minute. This is a Mercedes E400, a 3.5 litre twin-turbo V6 cruiser that is just effortless to drive. For me, that 2007 to 2014 window was pinnacle Mercedes. Build quality was off the charts and the engines were just sublime. This thing was buttery smooth, yet great fun on a B-road. And as I said in the review, map it, whack an exhaust on it, and you've got yourself a proper AMG. The fact you can still pick a very nice one of these up for around 17 grand is just bonkers to me. Now, between the Mercedes E400 and this car, I did plenty of reviews, but I want to talk about this BMW 335d instead, because, well, it's just awesome. The most under-the-radar car out there. D-badge it, and you'd think it was your run-of-the-mill 2-litre diesel. Oh, but it isn't. This thing is as fast as a VW Golf R, yet it'll easily do over 50 miles per gallon on the motorway. Oh, also, it handles like this.
Oh, my god, this thing is a serious weapon. And look at this engine. All the way to 5,000 RPM it pulls.
Next up, ultimate luxury. This is a pretty much fully spec'd Range Rover Autobiography. It even has a rare SVO paint job worth more than some cars. This is truly a special car, purely because it does pretty much everything an S-Class does, except it retains its practical aspect too. You can be chauffeured around London in this thing during the week, then take it to the farm on the weekend. Quite a unique machine, really. Last car now, and we may as well talk about something special. This is the Audi RS3. And going into this review, I was expecting an Audi S3 with a lovely soundtrack, and surprisingly, I was wrong. Let me show you.
Let's give it some. Well, hey, look at that. That was a bit of oversteer. That's what I'm talking about.
Look, Honda NSX.
Yeah. What? It oversteers. It oversteers. This is an Audi. Why is it oversteering?
This is weird for me really, because almost every review of this car I've seen concludes that the RS3 is a lovely sounding car, but rather inert in terms of driving experience. This car was nothing of the sort, however. Sharp, positive steering, a tight chassis, and an engine that only makes real power above 4,000 RPM makes for a rally car on the road experience. Like, really, it does. To sum it up, it's basically a posh Ford Focus RS. Now then, let's get into our categories. The most fun, the most surprising, and the shockingly fast. Let's start with the most fun. This one was actually way harder than I thought. The M4, whilst fun, was very much a serious track car, which meant exploiting it on the road couldn't really be done legally nor safely. The C63 S was definitely easier to play around with, but again, it was too fast for its own good. The Focus ST, whilst brilliant to drive, lacked in the sound department, and the Golf R, while sounding good, lacked in the handling department. Oh, what about the R8? Yeah, it's brilliant, but you can't even get near its limit on even an open road. So whilst fun, I can't justify putting it first. Hard this, isn't it? Well, after much pondering, I came down to two cars, and I still can't believe it, but the one I chose almost had 4 rings on the front. Yes, this was between the OG C63 and the RS3. The OG C63 just about took it for me though. It's just pure raw anger with 4 seats strapped to it, and thankfully, although fast, you could be an absolute hooligan in the thing well below the speed limit. So yeah, the old Mercedes C63 is the one for me. Now then, the most surprising. For me, this was between the Mercedes GLE 53 with its physics-breaking chassis dynamics and the Audi RS3. For me though, the RS3 just about surprised me the most. Whether it's the fact something with 4 rings on the front isn't an understeering mess, or the fact almost every journalist tells you it is. I don't know, but the second I felt the steering rack on it, I knew there was far more than just a 5-cylinder S3 going on under there. A truly special car, and one worthy of its seemingly inflated price tag. Moving to which car was shockingly fast? Well, the obvious choice would be the Audi R8, but the key word in this category is shockingly. I mean, it's pretty obvious an 850 horsepower supercar is going to be stupid quick, isn't it? Obvious choices aside, which one did I pick? Well, after much thought, I went for the 335D. Now again, you might think, well, it's got loads of power, of course it's fast. But to be as fast as a 380 horsepower Mercedes AMG A45 with less power takes some doing, especially for a diesel. Usually a diesel car is great for laydown torque, but this thing just kept revving all the way to 5,000 RPM. And no, it doesn't even run out of puff after that. What a cracking engine. Now, conclusion time. It's been a great year here at Paragon Cars, so let's make 2023 even better, shall we? I hope everyone had a great Christmas and a happy new year. Anyway, my name's Tom, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.